Time for today's Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw is host of the Shift podcast, the producer of The Locker Room, weekends on 97.3 ESPN, and Earnshaw Radio on all his social media platforms. And he joins us now for today's edition of Nick's Nuggets on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We got a whole bunch going on. What's happening in your world?
What's going on, Mr. Mike Gill? A lot going on today. There's some interesting nuggets. I got some interesting nuggets for you today. And we got to start with our stay or go candidate, JT Realmuto. And this one's a fascinating one because of his age. So I want to start with JT. We mentioned him yesterday. We've mentioned him plenty of times throughout the Nuggets before, but today is his day. And listen, next year he's heading into his age 35 year. He's gonna probably want a couple of years on that deal when he enters free agency. I heard Mike McGarry earlier today. He wouldn't go past 3 years. Well, I'm going to take it one step further than Mike McGarry. I wouldn't go past 2 years with JT Realmuto. And listen, he had a fine season this past year, but he is not the same player, not the same guy behind the dish or at the plate. If you look at some of his numbers, he had a -2 defensive runs saved and a -7.0 framing grade in 2025. He's not framing the baseball as well. He still has the good, decent pop time and getting guys out at second. He's still throwing them out at a decent clip. But in 2022, he had a 1.1 framing rating. So that's framing the baseball for extra strikes, right? It has gone down. He is not as good as a framer as he once was. He also has had knee surgery, right, within the past year. Last year, he had knee surgery during the season. He is heading into his mid to late 30s. You cannot extend him beyond 2 years. The problem with the Phillies and that what they have is they don't have a catcher behind him. Do you want to go with Marchand, who is 26 years of age? Do you trust him to take on that everyday role? Do you think he's good enough? Is he going to add value to your lineup? You're probably still trying to win a World Series, and we'll find out a lot tomorrow from Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thompson when they step to the podium. But JT, I would bring him back only because you have no really other options. The thing with JT Realmuto is there's nobody behind him. It's Stubbs and Marchand. Do you trust Marchand? He's heading into his prime, 26 years old. Great. But the other free agents out there aren't great either. What are you going to sign an old man Salvador Perez or something along those lines? No. So I think you bring him back, but it's max 2 years because I think, with a catcher, you got to be careful because they can fall off a cliff really fast. Kyle Schwarber, like we talked about yesterday, might take him a couple years to really fall off, especially since he's just DHing. But JT, I think you have to bring back because you have no other options. And Spot Track actually put out the estimated value for his contract, I should say. And it's around like $30 million for 2 years. That's where I would go. I would go
I think it was 2 years, 25.
Was it 25? Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah, our buddy over at Phil's Tailgate has all of the Spot Track values for Phillies free agents.
25.9. I just pulled it up on Spot Track just now. But yeah, he's right around $26 million. I think that's fair for 2 years for JT.
I think it's fair. It's just whether or not I want to spend it. That's the big thing. And we were talking a little bit about this earlier, which is how much of a drop-off do you think that JT is going to have offensively? Because to me, defensively between Marchand and JT, I think throwing guys out, Marchand showed he was very capable of that. Now, I don't know the difference in the ERA between when Marchand catches and JT catches. So there could be a drop-off in handling the pitching staff, all that stuff. That's quite a big possibility. But how much of a drop-off are you getting from JT, the offensive player? Is he going to go from 252 with 12 homers to, say, 240-ish with 8 homers? And if that's the case, you can't really afford, the drop-off for what you're going to pay. Now, if you said, I'm going to get you for $8 million on something to that effect, and you're playing less games, we're going to start letting Marchand catch a little bit more so that we can see if he can handle the everyday catching thing, and he plays about 80 games. Maybe I say 80, that's about half, but way more than he played. I contend the Phillies have used Realmuto way too much in his tenure here.
Yeah, I agree. I would have started playing him at first base years ago. Years ago, he should have been getting some run at first base before Harper so they could limit his innings and get more mileage out of him. When is that going to catch up to him? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe he is somebody who just could continue, have pretty decent years towards the end of his career, and then call it quits at age 36, 37 years of age. Maybe he's that type of guy. However, history has shown us Father Time comes up with everybody, all right? And he's heading into his mid-30s as a catcher. And how much time and mileage that he's had on him is it going to catch up to him, right? Like he's had the knee surgery already has had knee surgery. That's a red flag for a catcher at his age. The other aspect of this is how comfortable is the pitching staff with letting him walk? How comfortable are they? Would they prefer to have him back? Because that's a part of this that you have to remember too. A lot of these guys are very comfortable with JT behind the plate. They want him to call a game. And if you lose that leadership and the guy that you trust that has been here for years and has pitched with these guys for years, the Nolas, when Wheeler comes back, what is that going to be like for these guys, right? Like, do they want to lose that guy heading into free agency and they want to start over with a new catcher, or do you want to start over with Marchand? Because this is a decision they have to make. Do they want to go beyond 2 years? 3 years with an aging catcher when you already have plenty of aging players on this roster?
That's a tough one, man. They're in a lot of tough situations here where they have so many different guys they have to decide on based on age and, where they are, because they are in a time where they built this team to have already won a World Series, not trying to win a World Series. Now you're trying to keep the same guys to win your first World Series when the wish was that you would have won one in 2023 or 2024 and you weren't able to get it done. Now you've lost another one, and now you're saying, well, the guys didn't get it done. Now they're getting older, but they're the best options that we had to try to win another one. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place with certainly JT, because you don't have another catcher in the system. Let's say this was Trey Turner, who was about to come up to free agency. You could at least say, hey, I have Aiden Miller. I'm ready to turn it over to him. Let's say if this was, an outfielder, you could say, hey, I got Justin Crawford. I'm ready to turn it over to him. They don't have a guy they're ready to turn this thing over to.
No, and the guy they traded who would probably line up to be the next catcher of the franchise would have been Eduardo Tait, right? But he wasn't ready. He was 19 years old. He wouldn't have been up for years anyway. So even if you kept him, they would have no catcher behind him anyway. It's like, do you want to go with Marchand? Do you want to give him a shot to be that guy? I don't know if he has the talent level to do it just yet. So 2 years, I'm going to go a little under McGarry, 1 year less. I can't go 3 years. I think it's way too much for a catcher at his age. I just don't trust him, who has had knee surgery. That is the key thing here. The fact he's already had knee surgery is the problem. And like you and I have talked about, we thought he should have been taking off days, should have been playing first base years ago, and they did not do it. They ran him, I don't want to say into the ground, but they played him so much where that wear and tear of playing behind the dish, and we've seen him take some bad foul tips, baseballs off the shin, whatever, the groin area, right? Like, he's taking a beating back there plenty of times. When is that going to catch up? And, in the next couple of years is when you would think Father Time would catch up to him.
Yeah, and listen, Eduardo Tait, by the way, his ETA to the majors isn't until 2028,
Nothing.
so
Yeah.
He is still a ways away. I mean, to me, you have to make the decision. Is he that much of a help offensively over Marchand? Because I think defensively and calling the game and throwing runners out, I think throwing runners out, he is every bit as good as JT at this point. They're both throwing dudes out. Even Stubbs is not a bad thrower of the ball. But is the Marchand Stubbs drop off offensively so great that you can't afford to drop off? Now, the other options are, do you think that you can get into the trade world? Do you think you can make a trade? We talked about Adley Rushman's name came up. Yep. There are some other, catchers that I've read some articles. Jim Bowden wrote an article over at The Athletic today about some players that he thinks the Phillies should go after. He mentioned some younger catchers that you would have to give up even more to try to get. And I don't know how much you want to give up to replace catcher, because you gave up a pretty decent prospect to get JT right at when he was 28 years old. So do you go back down that road and find a guy like Rushman, who's now right at the same age as
Yeah.
JT is and say, hey, we're just going to do the same thing we did when we got JT, and we'll go get our next JT. The problem with Rushman is he stunk this year. Yeah.
He's been awful for the past year and a half, Mike. After that 24 All-Star break, he batted 207 with a 585 OPS. This year, 220 with a 673 OPS. So he hasn't been that good either for that long. So maybe, but that might be a good thing for the Phillies, right? Like the fact that he hasn't been as good over the past year and a half, that they gave the guy that they wanted to be their next catcher an 8-year extension. Maybe if you are the Phillies, you can get Rushman a little bit discounted because he hasn't been great. You have that leverage on your side. He hasn't been good for a year and a half, not just last year. After the All-Star break, the year before, he was batting around 200. He hasn't been that good for a while. So maybe he needs a fresh, place to start over, and you could get him for less value. That could be a possibility.
It's funny when they were good a couple of years ago when Rushman was, it looked like he was going to be the next guy, and everybody, wasn't he the first overall pick in the draft? I mean, people were just really excited about what type of player Adley Rushman looked like he was going to be, and he's been terrible for them. I mean, he's just been terrible to the point now. Now their best prospect is a catcher as well, so he's a guy that is movable because of the fact that you have a catcher behind him. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating scenario that you're going to look at, and I wouldn't be shocked if you make the call. Just make the call to see if you could get him and inquire about him and see what the value is. If you have to give too much of him, don't do it because it's not worth it. You might as well just bring back JT for the next 2 years.
So the article that Jim Bowden wrote over at The Athletic, he talked about Real Muto. He said the trade market. He mentioned Hunter Goodman, who's 26 years old. Now, he's in Colorado, 278, 31 homers, and I guess he's the guy that he's saying, hey, could he be the Real Muto, where you go and get him coming from a really bad team that he's going to be stuck there doing nothing? So do you target him like you did with JT Real Muto? He also mentions some other guys like Dalton Rushing, who's with the Dodgers, Harry Ford, who's with the Mariners, who's blocked by Cal Raleigh. But he does mention if you're going to go down the road of Rushing or Ford or Martinez with the Marlins, that you are going to have to sacrifice top-level prospects to get those level of players.
Yeah, and I don't think the Phillies want to do that at this point. We saw it at the deadline. They didn't trade Crawford, they didn't trade Miller, and they didn't trade Painter. I think those guys are going to be the next group that comes up for the Phillies, all three of them. I think at some point you're going to see every single one of them. Maybe not Painter, depending on where Painter's at. I would think he would be up at some point, but he did not have a good year last year. Miller and Crawford, those two, I think at some point it's a slam dunk. You see them next year at whatever it may be. Miller.
It would be disappointing if Crawford was not on the team on opening day.
Oh God, if they don't bring up Crawford, there's an issue. There's a few issues if they don't bring up Crawford next year. All right.
He does mention, by the way, in the article, he mentions Alex Bregman, that would be a guy that they should target to play third base. He also mentions in the outfield that Kyle Tucker would be a guy if, in fact, Schwarber ends up walking. He also mentions O'Neal Cruz from the Pirates as a guy that he thinks possibly that you could go after. And then he mentions getting him with Kevin Long to try to help him out as a guy who just hit 200 this past year.
Yeah.
And so he mentions Justin Crawford, O'Neal Cruz, and Kyle Tucker as guys to come up this year. And Cody Bellinger. He says if you can't land Tucker, pivot to Cody Bellinger.
Remember, last year this past year, I should say, O'Neal Cruz, there was mention of him, possibly the Phillies inquiring about him at the trade deadline this year. So that name's been linked to the Phillies a bunch. Same with Bellinger. I mean, a lot of these guys have.
Yeah. By the way, he mentions Trent Grisham, also Lewis Robert Jr. He says, I still think that trading for him could be the best fit for Robert to come with a lineup that has much more protection.
Yeah. Oh, man. Luis Robert. I mean, how many years in a row has it been for him to be mentioned with the Philadelphia Phillies? Feels like every year we're talking about. But it is what it is. That's the Phillies. I would keep JT as of right now. I don't think there's other options that are viable. It's a lot of what if this happens, if that happens, a lot of trade possibilities. But let's move along to the 76ers and Joel Embiid. You mentioned this yesterday. Brian Windhorst had something to say about Joel. I think there's a reason to get a little excited about these 76ers And we might be falling for these videos again. Take a listen to what Brian Windhorst had to say about Joel Embiid.
I think it's more important he was playing more than I'm going to sit here and analyze how he looked. So Friday is their last preseason game. It's at home. I assume he's going to try to go in that. And if there's no setbacks, I assume he might be out there for opening night. Now, the idea that he could come back before Paul George was not something I expected.
No.
But, and I think you got to be careful not to make any assumptions with Joel, but I think the Sixers could have Joel Embiid, could have him at the beginning of the season next week.
So, are we falling for a lot of the videos that are on social media of him practicing? He looks great. He does look great in the videos. He looks slimmed down. He looks faster. He looks healthier. Are we falling for the videos? Or are we falling for the trick again? The Ben Simmons type of deal with the Sixers right now?
Well, the only difference for me in this situation is this videos are coming from the team. They're not coming from Ben Simmons or any of Ben Simmons' like shot coaches or anything like that. These are coming from the Sixers themselves. Yep. Why would the Sixers want to put themselves in position to look like complete idiots for putting these things out there and then him not being ready to play? It would almost be like, well, why would you do that? And then Nick Nurse has been pretty vocal in that, yeah, we think he might be able to play. Now, he's not saying definitely, but he is suggesting that, hey, there is a good chance that you might see him. Apparently, by the way, Paul George also practiced today 3-on-3, not 5-on-5. But that he did say that Joel could play on Friday. I don't know why, if you were the Sixers and he had no shot of playing, and where you thought that this was, they just weren't going to play him, why would you even put that out there?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Why would you put this out here and put yourself in that position to like, oh, and then bring everybody down, right? Have everyone excited up here and then bring everybody down with Joel Embiid not playing or not being as good as he once was, right? He looks great. Just from the videos, talking to people who were at the scrimmage the other day in Delaware. I don't need him to play in the final preseason game. He doesn't need to play. He doesn't need.
By the way, Joel Embiid has not played in a preseason game since 2023.
Yeah, I don't need Joel in a preseason game. Now, home opener, we can go home opener. Home opener would be fantastic.
I don't really want to see Joel play either, because the last thing you need is Joel getting hurt playing in a preseason game. But the fact that he could make an appearance, maybe even just
limited minutes.
Just up and down the court till the first time out, like 4 minutes, just to see him out there, just to say, you know what, he is physically slimmer and ready to go. That, I think, might help people say, you know what, I'll give him a shot.
Give him a shot. Give him a shot. We'll see. All right, a lot of injuries with the Sixers. Before I get out of here, I do want to get to my third nugget. Are you familiar with the show Abbott Elementary, Mike?
I've heard of it.
So they recorded an episode of this show during the Philly season in late August. And you know what happened in late August? Kyle Schwarber hit 4 home runs in one game. So they were recording the episode simultaneous the night of Kyle Schwarber hitting 4 home runs. That is actually going to air. So I'm very curious to see how this all shakes out with them not knowing. I guess this was a pre-planned thing where they recorded the episode at the stadium. We've seen TV shows do this in the past. They are going to air that today. And the fact that it was on the same day as Schwarber hitting the 4 home runs, that's on the night. We've seen Phillies in pop culture before. You'll see it again tonight.
Well, listen, I heard, what was the show? Task, is it called?
Which show's that? I don't even know what that
Task is it with Sylvester Stallone, I think it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard of that show.
So apparently they're getting ripped because
new or whatever, right?
Yeah, apparently they're getting ripped because they, instead of saying Delco, they said Delco County. Instead of okay. So they're trying to make references, but the references weren't like what people from the area would use. They kind of, so anytime, you run into some, but there's a lot of things that like use the area for the backdrop of shows,
Yeah, so Kyle Schwarber's 4 home run appearance going to make a
4 home run appearance, making a little TV debut. And that was the Nuggets here today. They're brought to you by the Hub, gear that works as hard as you do. A little Joel Embiid. No, he's laying off the Nuggets, apparently.
Yeah, need him to lay off the Nuggets. No Nuggets for Embiid, all right? Only Joel Embiid on Knicks Nuggets, all right? That's it.
Well, we hope the Joel Embiid Nugget that a week from tonight that he's in the starting lineup.
I hope. No preseason for Joel. None. Zero. Zip.
Well, a week from tonight is the opener.
Yeah, I know.
Preseason's Friday night.
I don't need to see him till then. No preseason for Joel. Zero.
All right, Nick. See you, man.
Peace.